The research ship Explorer rocked gently on the waves of the Pacific Ocean. Dr. James Walker stood on the deck, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The morning sun glinted off the water, making it shimmer like diamonds. But James wasn't interested in what was above the water. His mind was focused on what lay beneath. "Dr. Walker, you should see this," called out Mike, his assistant. Mike had been working with the new quantum resonance scanner in the ship's lab. James hurried below deck. The lab was filled with computers and strange equipment. The centerpiece was the QR-5000, the newest and most powerful scanner for seeing under the ocean floor. It had cost millions to build, but today it would prove its worth. "Look at these readings," Mike said, pointing to a screen filled with colored patterns. "I've never seen anything like this before." James leaned closer. The screen showed a section of ocean floor about 2 miles below them. But instead of the usual rocky patterns, there were perfectly straight lines and sharp angles. "That can't be natural," James said, his heart beating faster. "Nature doesn't make perfect squares." "That's what I thought," Mike said. "And look at this." He pressed a few buttons, and the image zoomed out. The strange pattern wasn't just in one spot. It covered an area the size of a small city. "We need to get a better look," James said. "Prepare the deep-sea drone." An hour later, the team gathered around another screen. The drone was sending back live video as it descended into the dark waters. At first, there was nothing to see but endless blue. Then, as it got deeper, the water turned darker and darker until the drone's lights were the only source of brightness. "We're approaching the site," said Lisa, who was controlling the drone. 2,000 meters and going deeper. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Years of research, countless failed expeditions, and millions in funding had led to this moment. James held his breath as the ocean floor came into view. And there it was. "My God," whispered Mike. The drone's lights revealed a massive structure half buried in the silt. It was clearly not a rock formation. It had a sleek, curved shape, with what looked like windows along one side. It was a ship, but unlike any ship humans had ever built. "It's huge," said Lisa, "at least 200 meters long. And look at the material," James said, pointing to the hull. "It's not metal or wood. I've never seen anything like it." The outer shell had a faint blue-green color that seemed to glow slightly under the drone's lights. There were no signs of rust or decay despite being underwater for what must have been a very long time. "Take samples," James ordered. "We need to know what this thing is made of." The drone extended a mechanical arm and carefully scraped a small piece from the hull. The material came away easily, suggesting it wasn't as hard as metal. "Got it," Lisa said, bringing the drone back up. Later that day, James studied the sample in the ship's lab. The material was lighter than aluminum but stronger than steel. It contained elements that weren't on the periodic table. This wasn't just an unknown ship. It was made of unknown materials. "The carbon dating results are in," Mike said, entering the lab with a printout. "You're not going to believe this." James took the paper and read the numbers, then read them again. "This can't be right," he said. "Run the test again." 3 hours later, the results were the same. The ship was approximately 30,000 years old. That was impossible. Human civilization was only about 10,000 years old. The earliest known boat was a simple canoe dating back 8,000 years. This was something else entirely. "We need to call the university," James said. "And probably the government too." Within days, the discovery was all over the news. Most scientists were skeptical. They suggested errors in the testing or alternative explanations. Some even accused James of faking the whole thing. "They'll see soon enough," James told his team as they continued to map the site. "This is just the beginning." He was more right than he knew. 2 weeks after their initial discovery, similar readings came in from research vessels in the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and even the Arctic. The patterns were all the same. Giant ships of unknown origin, all approximately 30,000 years old. James was in the middle of a video call with researchers from around the world when Mike burst into his cabin. "James, you need to see this now." The new scans covered a much larger area than before. What they showed was mind-blowing. The ships weren't scattered randomly. They formed a perfect circle around the Earth, like a giant net or web. There are millions of them, James said, his voice barely above a whisper, all deliberately placed. The implications were clear. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was the work of intelligent beings who had visited Earth long before humans had even learned to farm. "We're looking at the greatest discovery in human history," he told the shocked faces on his screen. "We're not alone in the universe." And we never were. That night, as the Explorer floated above the ancient wreck, James stood on the deck again. This time he looked up at the stars instead of down at the ocean. Somewhere out there were the beings who had built these ships. Did they still exist? Would they return once they knew their ships had been found? The biggest question of all kept him awake that night. Why had they hidden their ships under the sea 30,000 years ago? And what would happen now that humans had found them? James didn't know the answers yet, but he was determined to find out. 3 months after the first discovery, the world had changed. Ships from every major country were scattered across the oceans, each searching for more of the ancient vessels. Dr. James Walker had become famous overnight. His face was on TV shows and magazines. People stopped him on the street for photos, but fame wasn't what James wanted. He wanted answers. "The United Nations has called for an emergency meeting," said Mike, reading from his tablet. They were back on land now, in a new research center built just for studying the ships. "All the major powers are fighting over who gets to keep what they find." James shook his head. "These ships don't belong to any country. They belong to everyone, to all of humanity." "Try telling that to the military," Mike replied. "The U.S. Navy took control of our first site last week. It wasn't just the American military that was interested. Russia, China, the European Union, everyone wanted the technology inside those ships. Whatever civilization had built them was thousands of years ahead of current human technology." "Dr. Walker," a woman's voice called from across the room. It was Anna Reed, a brilliant engineer who had joined their team after the discovery went public. "I found something important." James and Mike walked over to her workstation. She had been working on improving the scanning technology to see deeper into the ocean floor. "I modified the quantum resonance scanner," she explained. "I doubled its power and changed how it processes the data." "And?" James asked. She pulled up an image on her screen. It showed the entire Pacific Ocean, but with thousands of bright dots spread across it. "Each dot is a ship," she said. "There are more of them than we thought. Many, many more." James stared at the screen in amazement. "How many are we talking about?" "Millions," Anna said. "And that's just in the Pacific. I'm getting similar readings from the other oceans." She pressed a button and the view expanded to show the whole Earth. It was covered in dots like stars in the night sky. But something else caught James's attention. "They're not random," he said, pointing to patterns in the arrangement. "Look at this. They form shapes like letters or symbols." The team spent the next week analyzing the patterns. The ships weren't just scattered around. They were deliberately placed to form a massive pattern that covered the entire planet. "It's like someone writing a message on the Earth itself," Anna said. "But who was supposed to read it and why hide it under the ocean?" Their work was interrupted when a military officer entered the lab. "Dr. Walker, I'm Colonel Davis. I need you to come with me." "Why?" James asked. "National security," the colonel replied. "We found something you need to see." James was flown to a secret military base in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was built on a small island surrounded by warships. In the center of the base was a massive hangar. "We recovered this 3 days ago," Colonel Davis said as they entered the hangar. Inside was a section of one of the ships. It was about 50 feet long and glowed with a faint blue light. Dozens of scientists in white lab coats were studying it. "We managed to cut this piece off and bring it to the surface," the colonel explained. "It wasn't easy. The material is harder than diamond once it's out of water." James approached the ship section carefully. Up close, he could see patterns etched into its surface, symbols that looked like writing. Have you been inside it? He asked. The colonel nodded. There's a door on the other side, follow me. The inside of the ship was even more amazing than the outside. The walls were lined with what looked like control panels, but with no buttons or screens, just smooth surfaces. With more symbols, the air was strangely fresh, as if the ship was still alive somehow. We found these, the colonel said, pointing to a row of small, crystal-like objects on a table. They seemed to be some kind of data storage. James picked one up. It was warm, to the touch, and seemed to pulse slightly like a heartbeat. Have you been able to read them? No, the colonel admitted. That's why we brought you here. For the next 2 weeks, James worked with the military scientists to understand the crystals. They tried everything, X-rays, lasers, computers, but nothing worked until Anna had another breakthrough. The ships weren't sunken by accident, she told James during a video call. They were deliberately hidden. How do you know that? James asked. I've been studying the patterns, she said. The way they're arranged, the depth they're buried, it's all too perfect. Someone put them there on purpose. But why? James wondered. To hide them from someone, Anna suggested. Or to wait for something to happen. The next day, one of the military scientists made a discovery. When exposed to a specific frequency of sound, the crystal data storage units lit up and projected symbols into the air. It's like a hologram, James said, watching the floating symbols with awe. But we still can't read it. They needed a linguist, someone who could decipher the alien language. Thomas Ford was the best in the world, having created programs that translated ancient human languages never before understood. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, Thomas said after studying the symbols for a week. But there are patterns, just like in human languages. Give me time. Time was something they might not have. Another ship, this one in the Indian Ocean, had started to move. After 30,000 years of sitting silently on the ocean floor, it was waking up. Something triggered it, Anna told James. Maybe it was our scans or the piece you removed. Or maybe, James said, a chill running down his spine. It was programmed to wake up at this specific time. Maybe whoever put these ships here is coming. Back. As if to confirm his fears, all the ships around the world began to pulse with light, sending signals up through the water toward the stars. The global hunt for answers had taken an unexpected turn. Now humanity wasn't just looking for ancient history. They were preparing for possible first contact. And as James looked at the data coming in from around the world, one thing became clear. The ships hadn't been hidden under the sea by accident. They had been waiting. For 30,000 years they had been waiting, and now the wait was over. Thomas Ford hadn't slept in 3 days. The linguist's office was filled with papers covered in strange symbols, copies of the alien writing found on the ships. Cups of cold coffee sat forgotten on every surface. His eyes were red from staring at screens for too long. But his tired face broke into a smile as Dr. James Walker entered the room. I've got it, Thomas said, his voice hoarse but excited. Or at least I've got the basics. James couldn't believe it. You can read their language? How? It's not as alien as we thought, Thomas explained, pulling up images on his computer. All languages have patterns. This one uses a system based on mathematics, specifically prime numbers. Once I figured that out, the rest started to make sense. He showed James a series of symbols and their translations. This means star, Thomas said, pointing to one symbol. This means ship, and this... He paused, pointing to a complex pattern. This means human. James stared at the symbol. They knew about us 30,000 years ago? Thomas nodded. According to what I've translated so far, they called themselves the Guardians. They were an advanced civilization that traveled between stars. They visited Earth during the last ice age. Over the next few hours, Thomas explained what he had learned. The Guardians had found Earth while exploring this part of the galaxy. They discovered early humans, primitive but with potential. They watched as our ancestors hunted, made tools, and painted on cave walls. But they were worried about us, Thomas said. The records mention our aggressive nature and territorial instincts. They saw how we fought each other over resources. So they left? James asked. Thomas shook his head. They were forced to leave. According to the translations, they were fleeing from some kind of disaster, something about a wave of darkness coming through the galaxy. And the ships? James asked. Why leave them here? They couldn't take everything with them, Thomas explained. So they hid their technology where primitive humans couldn't reach it, deep under the oceans. They planned to return one day when the danger had passed. But they never came back, James said. Thomas's face grew serious. That's the thing. I think they might be coming now. When we disturbed the first ship, it seems we activated some kind of beacon, a distress signal. As if to confirm his words, James's phone rang. It was Anna. James, you need to see this, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Turn on any news channel. James grabbed the remote and switched on the TV in Thomas's office. Every channel showed the same thing, a massive object in Earth's orbit. It wasn't a satellite or space station, it was a ship, identical in design to the ones under the oceans, but 100 times larger. It just appeared, Anna said over the phone. No warning. 1 minute there was nothing, then there was a flash of light, and there it was. The world was in panic. Military forces were on high alert. News reporters speculated wildly about invasion or the end of the world. But James felt something different, a strange sense of anticipation. After 30,000 years, the Guardians had returned. 3 days later, James, Thomas, Anna, and representatives from major world governments gathered at a military base. The alien ship had sent a message, in multiple human languages, including English, Chinese, Russian, and Arabic. They wanted to meet. A smaller vessel had descended from the mothership and landed at the designated meeting point. As they waited for the doors to open, James wondered what the Guardians would look like. Would they be humanoid? Completely alien? Something in between? The ship's door slid open silently. Light poured out, temporarily blinding everyone. When James could see again, he gasped. The being that stepped out looked almost human, tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large, deep eyes. It wore simple clothing that seemed to shimmer and change colors slightly as it moved. "We are the Guardians," it said in perfect English, its voice melodic and calm. "We have returned as promised." The alien, who introduced himself as Keeper, was shocked to find humans had advanced so quickly. In their calculations, humanity should still be using basic tools and living in small settlements. "Your evolution has been unexpected," Keeper said as they sat in a conference room. "When we left, your kind used stone tools and had just discovered fire. Now you build machines that can think and have walked on your moon." "We're quick learners," James said with a small smile. But Keeper's next words wiped the smile from his face. "You must stop your excavations immediately," the alien said. "The ships were hidden for a reason." "What reason?" asked the American president, who was attending via video conference. "Your world was placed under quarantine," Keeper explained. "Your species showed great potential, but also concerning tendencies toward violence and destruction. The Council of Guardians decided to let you develop naturally, without interference. The ships contain technology you are not ready for." "Who are you to decide what we're ready for?" James asked, feeling a flash of anger. Keeper turned those deep eyes on him. "We have seen civilizations destroy themselves with technologies they weren't prepared to control. The ships contain weapons that could devastate not just your world, but entire star systems." The room fell silent as everyone took in this information. "But there's more," Keeper continued. "The ships were also hidden to protect you. If our enemies knew of your existence, they would come here and enslave your people, or worse." "Your enemies?" James asked. "The wave of darkness mentioned in your records?" Keeper looked surprised. "You've translated our language? Impressive." The alien nodded. "Yes, they call themselves the Harvesters. They consume worlds and the energy of living beings. We fought them for centuries before we were forced to flee to the far reaches of the galaxy." "Are they still out there?" Thomas asked. "Yes. Keeper said simply. And if they detect the energy signatures from our old ships, they will come here. That is why you must stop your excavations and return what you have found to the depths. The human representatives looked at each other uncertain. Give up the greatest discovery in human history, return to being alone in the universe, ignorant of what lay beyond the stars? James stood up. No, he said firmly. We won't stop learning. We won't hide from the truth. If these harvesters are still a threat, then we need to prepare, not bury, our heads in the sand. Keeper's expression was unreadable. You speak bravely, but you don't understand the danger. Then help us understand, James replied. Teach us, work with us. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own wars. We're stronger than you think. For a long moment, Keeper said nothing. Then, to everyone's surprise, the alien's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. Perhaps, Keeper said, you have evolved further than we anticipated. What happened next would change the course of human history forever. 2 weeks after first contact, a special meeting was called. Representatives from all major countries gathered in a secure conference room at the United Nations building in New York. Keeper, the Guardian ambassador, sat at one end of the long table. Captain Mark Stone of the newly formed International Space Coalition sat at the other. The room was tense. Earlier that day, Keeper had delivered an ultimatum. Earth had 7 days to return all recovered artifacts to the sea and stop all research on the ships. If humans refused, the Guardians would take the artifacts by force. We understand your concern, Captain Stone began, his voice steady despite the pressure. But we cannot simply abandon this knowledge. It belongs to all of humanity now. Keeper's large eyes blinked slowly. You still do not understand the danger. The technology in those ships could destroy your civilization. Or it could help us advance by centuries, replied the representative from Japan. We have already learned how to create new materials based on the ship's hull. Materials that could help us build better homes, better hospitals, and better weapons, Keeper added. We have seen this pattern on 100 worlds. First come the medical advances, then the weapons. Mark leaned forward. With respect, you're judging us based on what we were 30,000 years ago. We've grown. We've learned. Yes, we still have wars and conflicts, but we also have art, music, literature. We explore not just to conquer, but to understand. Pretty words, said Keeper. But your actions tell a different story. Our scans show your militaries are already attempting to reverse engineer our propulsion systems. The room fell silent. It was true. We need to defend ourselves, said the Russian representative finally. You've told us about these harvesters. If they're as dangerous as you claim, shouldn't we be prepared? Keeper stood up. His 7-foot frame made everyone else look small. The harvesters would crush you like insects. Your most advanced weapons would be toys to them. The only way to survive is to remain hidden. Hide and hope they never find us, Mark asked. That's not the human way. Then perhaps the human way leads to extinction, Keeper replied coldly. The meeting ended without resolution. The ultimatum stood: 7 days to comply or face consequences. Back at the research facility, James, Anna, and Thomas worked frantically to understand as much as they could before the deadline. The Guardian ship is still in orbit, Anna said, looking at satellite feeds on her tablet. But 3 more have arrived in the last hour. James nodded grimly. They're preparing to take back their technology by force if necessary. Can we really fight them? Thomas asked. Their ships can travel between stars. Ours can barely reach the moon. We might not have to fight, James said, studying the crystal data storage unit in his hand. There's something not right about all this. Why hide millions of ships? Why not just take them when they left? And why did they look so much like us? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Helen Grant, a geneticist, burst into the lab waving a folder of papers. You need to see this, she said, spreading the papers on the table. I've been studying the DNA samples we found on the ships, comparing them to human DNA. James looked at the complex charts and graphs. What am I looking at? Similarities, Helen said excitedly. Too many similarities. The Guardian DNA and human DNA share 85% of the same markers. That's impossible unless we're related, James finished, his mind racing with the implications. Helen nodded. Either they evolved from us, or we evolved from them. Given the timeline, I'd say we're their descendants. The team stared at each other in shock. Humans were related to the Guardians. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was right in front of them. We need to tell Captain Stone, James said. This changes everything. The next day, Mark Stone requested another meeting with Keeper. This time, only Mark, James, and a few key scientists attended. We've made a discovery, Mark said, pushing the genetic reports across the table. One that I think you already know about. Keeper looked at the papers but didn't touch them. His expression remained unreadable. We're related to you, aren't we? James asked directly. That's why you look so much like us. That's why you came to Earth in the first place. For a long moment, Keeper said nothing. Then he sighed, a very human gesture. Yes, he admitted. Your people are distant cousins to ours. We visited many worlds, seeding life where conditions were right. Earth was one such world, though your evolution took an unexpected path. You created us? Mark asked, stunned. No, Keeper said. We merely guided early development. Your species evolved on its own, much faster than we anticipated. When we returned, we expected to find primitive beings still learning to use tools. Instead, we found a spacefaring civilization on the verge of joining the galactic community. Is that why you want us to stay hidden? To protect us, James asked. Partly, Keeper replied. But also because we fear what you might become. You evolved to survive on a dangerous planet. You are more aggressive, more adaptive than we are. Your technology advances at a frightening pace. And you're afraid of us, Mark realized. Not just for us. Keeper's silence confirmed it. Listen to me, Mark said, his voice firm but respectful. We don't want to be your enemies. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. But we won't live in fear and we won't give up what we've learned. There must be a middle ground. There is no middle ground with the harvesters, Keeper warned. They will sense the energy from our ships and come to investigate. When they find you, humans with Guardian technology, they will destroy your entire planet. Then help us, James urged. Don't force us back into ignorance. Teach us to defend ourselves. You cannot, Keeper began, but was interrupted by an alarm from his wrist device. His blue skin paled visibly. It's too late, he said, reading the alien symbols on the device. A Harvester scout ship has entered your solar system. They detected the energy surge when you activated the first ship. The room erupted in panic. Questions flew from all sides. How much time did they have? What weapons would work against our harvesters? Should they evacuate major cities? Mark's voice cut through the chaos. How long until they reach Earth? 3 days, Keeper replied. Maybe 4. Mark looked around the room, at the faces of the scientists and leaders who now carried the fate of humanity on their shoulders. Then he turned back to Keeper. Then we have 3 days to prepare, he said calmly, and we'll need your help. For the first time since they'd met him, Keeper looked uncertain. You cannot win this fight. Maybe not, Mark agreed. But we will fight anyway. That's what humans do. The Guardian stared at Mark for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Perhaps, he said. That is why we were right to fear you. The next 3 days were the most frantic in human history. People around the world watched the skies with fear and wonder. Some panicked and fled to bunkers. Others gathered in churches, mosques, and temples to pray. But most did what humans had always done in the face of danger. They prepared to fight. At the underwater research base, now the command center for Earth's defense, James Walker worked alongside Anna, Thomas, and scientists from around the world. They had a desperate plan. The ancient weapons are our only hope, James told Captain Mark Stone as they stood in front of the largest piece of recovered ship. If we can activate them before the harvester reaches Earth orbit, we might have a chance. Can you make them work? Mark asked. Keeper says they were designed to respond only to Guardian DNA. James smiled. That's the one piece of good news we have. Remember, we share 85% of our DNA with the Guardians. Helen has been testing the systems with human DNA samples. Some of us can activate the technology. Some of us? Mark asked. People with a specific genetic marker, James explained. About 1 in 20 humans has it, a direct link to our Guardian ancestors. Helen calls it the star gene. Mark looked skeptical. And you have this gene? I do. James nodded. So does Anna. We've been testing the weapons systems all night. Across the room, Anna was working with a team to connect the ancient ship's power core to modern systems. The core glowed with blue-green light, pulsing like a heartbeat. The problem isn't making them work, James continued. It's understanding how to control them. These weapons are beyond anything we've ever seen. Keeper, who had been watching silently, stepped forward. I will help you, he said, surprising everyone in the room. The Council will not approve, but I cannot watch your species die when you fight with such courage. Over the next 48 hours, Keeper taught them how to use the Guardian weapons. The most powerful was something called a gravity lance, a weapon that could create a temporary black hole, powerful enough to tear apart even the largest ships. Be careful, Keeper warned as James practiced the control gestures. Too much power and you could damage your own planet. The weapons respond to emotion as well as command. Meanwhile, governments around the world prepared their conventional forces for all the good they would do. Fighter jets were armed and ready. Missile silos were opened. Nuclear submarines moved into position. They're brave, Keeper said, watching the military preparations on a monitor. But their weapons will do nothing against harvester shields. It's not about winning, Mark told him. It's about standing together. Fighting together. The harvester ship entered Earth orbit exactly as Keeper had predicted. It was massive, at least 5 miles long, covered in jagged spines that made it look like a metal sea urchin. It blocked out the sun over North America, casting a shadow that chilled everyone who saw it. It's scanning us, Keeper said, reading the data on his wrist device. Looking for the Guardian energy signatures. When it finds the ships, it will attack. Then we attack first, Mark ordered. The plan was simple but dangerous. Using the gravity lance would require getting close to the harvester ship. James and Anna would pilot a modified spacecraft carrying the ancient weapon. Earth's military forces would provide a distraction. As they prepared to launch, Keeper approached James one last time. There is something you should know, the Guardian said quietly. The Council did not send me here to help you return the ships. They sent me to determine if humans were ready to join the galactic community. And what did you decide? James asked. Keeper's lips curved in that almost smile. I'm helping you fight the harvesters. What do you think I decided? The launch went smoothly. James and Anna piloted the craft toward the harvester ship, hiding in the shadow of Earth to avoid early detection. Behind them, the combined air forces of Earth's nations flew in formation, a display of unity never before seen in human history. They've spotted us, Anna said as alarms blared. The harvester ship was turning, its weapons ports opening like dark, hungry mouths. All forces engage, Mark ordered from the command center. The sky lit up with missiles and laser fire. The human weapons couldn't penetrate the harvester shields, but they served their purpose: distraction. James and Anna flew directly at the massive alien ship, dodging energy beams that could vaporize mountains. We're in position, James reported. Activating gravity lance. He placed his hand on the ancient control panel. It glowed in response to his touch, recognizing the Guardian genes in his DNA. The ship hummed with power as the weapon charged, but something was wrong. It's not working properly, James said, panic rising in his voice. The targeting system won't lock on. They're shields, Keeper explained through the radio. The harvesters have adapted since our last encounter. Anna's face showed grim determination. Then we'll have to get closer, inside their shields. That's suicide, Keeper warned. Maybe, Anna replied, but it's our only chance. James nodded, and they pushed the engines to full power, flying straight at the Harvester ship. Enemy fire blazed around them, some shots hitting their craft and damaging the outer hull. Shields at 30%, Anna reported. We won't survive another direct hit. They were close now, so close they could see the details of the alien hull, the strange patterns that covered its surface. Now! James shouted, activating the gravity lance again. This time the weapon responded fully. A beam of blue-white light shot from their ship, striking the Harvester at point-blank range. For a moment nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to fold inward, creating a swirling vortex of darkness that began to tear the enemy ship apart. It's working, Anna cried, but our ship is being pulled in too. The gravity was too strong, drawing them toward the artificial black hole. Their engines strained against the pull but couldn't break free. Then, to their surprise, 3 Guardian ships appeared, firing tractor beams that locked onto their craft. The Council changed their mind. Keeper's voice came through the radio. They decided humans were worth saving after all. The Guardian ships pulled them to safety as the Harvester vessel collapsed into the gravity well, crushed into nothingness. The temporary black hole winked out of existence, leaving only scattered debris. When James and Anna returned to Earth, they were greeted as heroes. The world had watched the battle through satellite feeds. Humans had stood together against an impossible threat, and won. 1 month later, a formal meeting was held at the United Nations. Keeper, now officially the Guardian ambassador to Earth, addressed the gathered leaders. For 30,000 years we watched your evolution from afar, he said. We feared you. We doubted you. We underestimated you. Today I am proud to announce that the Guardian Council has voted unanimously to end Earth's quarantine. Humanity is now recognized as a spacefaring civilization and invited to join the Galactic Alliance. As the room erupted in cheers and applause, James looked at Anna and smiled. The ships that had been hidden under the sea for 30,000 years had not just changed human history, they had opened the door to humanity's future among the stars. And as the celebration continued around them, James couldn't help but wonder what other secrets might be waiting to be discovered, now that humanity had taken its first real steps into the vast unknown universe. The massive Starship Seeker glided through the darkness of space, its engines humming quietly as it approached the mysterious object. Director Kroll stood on the bridge, his 4 eyes fixed on the main screen. His thin gray fingers tapped nervously on the console. Magnify the image, he ordered. The screen flickered and the object grew larger. It was a ship, ancient and scarred, drifting silently among the stars. It was bigger than any vessel Kroll had ever seen, nearly 3 times the size of the Seeker. How old is it? Kroll asked. Engineer Tal moved her 6-fingered hands across her control panel. Her skin shimmered with a blue glow in the dim light of the bridge. According to our scans, the ship is approximately 5,000 years old, she said. But the technology, Director, it's unlike anything in our database. Kroll's upper eyes blinked with excitement while his lower pair remained focused on the screen. This discovery could change everything. The Galactic Coalition had been searching for advanced ancient technology for centuries. Any signs of life? He asked. Navigator Pax shook his head. The small, bird-like alien checked his instruments again. No clear life signs, Director, but there are unusual energy readings from within. The ship. It's not completely dead. Captain Reed entered the bridge. The security officer moved with the careful precision of a trained warrior. His red scales gleamed under the lights as he approached Kroll. Director, I've reviewed the preliminary data, Reed said, his voice low and serious. The ship appears to have originated from a Class 111 death world. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Class 111, the most extreme planetary classification. Worlds so deadly that most species couldn't survive on them for more than a few minutes without special equipment. Dr. Lem, who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner, looked up with wide eyes. The medical officer's antenna twitched with nervous energy. "That's impossible," Lem said. "No known species has evolved on a Class 111 world. The radiation, gravity, and atmospheric toxins would prevent advanced life from developing." Reed handed Kroll a datapad. "The ship's hull contains elements only found on extreme worlds. And look at the thickness designed to withstand incredible pressure and radiation." Kroll studied the information. His people, the Vorn, were known throughout the galaxy as great scientists and explorers. This discovery could be the most important of his career. "We need to board that vessel," he decided. "Prepare an exploration team." Reed frowned. "Director, with all due respect, we should be cautious. If this truly is from a Class 111 world, we don't know what dangers might be aboard." Kroll waved his concerns away. "That's why you'll be joining us, Captain. Your security expertise will be essential." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances, but no one argued with the director. 3 days later, the exploration team gathered in the Seeker's launch bay. 5 members had been selected for the mission. Director Kroll would lead, with Captain Reed handling security. Dr. Lem would search for any biological samples, Engineer Tal would study the technology, and Navigator Pax would map the vessel. Each wore specialized environmental suits designed to protect them from unknown dangers. The suits were the best the Coalition could produce, with air filters, radiation shields, and temperature controls. "Remember," Kroll said as they checked their equipment, "this is primarily a scientific mission. We observe and document. Touch nothing unless absolutely necessary." Reed checked his pulse rifle one last time. "And if we encounter hostile life forms?" "We retreat immediately," Kroll replied. "But the ship has been drifting for thousands of years. I doubt anything dangerous still lives aboard." The team boarded the shuttle, and it detached from the Seeker with a soft hiss. Navigator Pax guided the small craft toward the ancient vessel, which grew larger in their viewport as they approached. "Look at the size of it," Tal whispered. "You could fit 20 Coalition cruisers inside." As they drew closer, they could see the damage on the ship's hull. Great gouges and burn marks scarred its surface. Some looked like weapons damage, others like the results of collisions with space debris over thousands of years. "Scanning for a docking point," Pax said, his fingers dancing over the controls. The shuttle circled the massive ship. After several minutes, Pax pointed to a large opening on the vessel's side. "There, it looks like a hangar bay." Reed frowned. "It's too convenient. Could be a trap. Or it could be exactly what we need." Kroll countered. "Take us in, Navigator." The shuttle slowly entered the dark opening. Their lights illuminated a vast chamber that could hold dozens of ships their size. Pax carefully set the shuttle down on the ancient deck. "Atmosphere analysis?" Kroll asked. Dr. Lem checked the readings. "Toxic to all known Coalition species. High levels of methane, carbon dioxide, and several unknown compounds. Temperature is 287 Kelvin. Gravity is 1.2 times Coalition standard. Keep your suits sealed at all times," Kroll ordered. "Let's move out." The team exited the shuttle, their boots making soft metallic sounds on the deck. Their lights cut through the darkness, revealing the strange architecture of the hangar. Unlike the clean, curved designs of Coalition ships, this vessel had sharp angles and exposed mechanical systems. "Look at these markings," Tal said, pointing to symbols etched into a wall. "I've never seen anything like this writing system. Can you translate it?" Kroll asked. Tal shook her head. "Not yet. I'll need time to process the language." They moved deeper into the ship, through corridors that seemed designed for beings larger than themselves. The air was stale even through. Their filters and strange sounds echoed in the distance, the groans and creaks of an ancient ship shifting in space. "Director?" Reed called out, his voice tense. "Look at this." He was pointing at a section of wall where the metal had been cut. The edges were rough, melted by some kind of tool. "This damage is recent," Reed said. "Very recent." Kroll examined the cut. "How recent?" "Days, maybe hours." Reed raised his weapon. We're not alone here. Dr. Lem scanned the area. I'm not detecting any life signs. Your equipment might not recognize whatever lives here, Reed said grimly. They continued forward more cautiously. The corridor opened into a larger room filled with what appeared to be control panels and screens. Most were dark, but a few flickered with dim light. Some systems are still functioning after all this time, Tal said with awe. The power source must be incredible. Kroll approached one of the active panels. Can you interface with it? Before Tal could answer, a loud clang echoed through the room. The team froze. The sound came again, closer this time. Metal against metal. Defensive positions, Reed whispered, moving to the front of the group. They waited in silence. The sounds grew louder, more rhythmic. Footsteps. A light appeared in the corridor ahead, moving toward them. Reed aimed his weapon. Coalition security, identify yourself, he called out. The light stopped. Then a voice answered, clear, calm, and completely unexpected. Well, hello there. Didn't expect visitors today. A figure stepped into the room. It stood on two legs and had two arms, similar to several coalition species. But this being wore only a simple suit with patches and crude seals. Its head was mostly hairless, with a flat face and rounded features. The being held up its hands. I'm Tom. Ship maintenance. You folks look a bit lost. The exploration team stared in stunned silence. This creature was walking around in a minimal protection suit on a ship from a Class 111 death world. It should have been impossible. What are you? Dr. Lem finally asked. The being called Tom smiled, showing flat white teeth. I'm human. From Earth. And I've got to say, your timing is perfect. Captain Wells just got the coffee maker working again, and she's been wondering when someone would notice all the noise we've been making. The alien exploration team stared at Tom in shock. Captain Reed kept his weapon aimed at the human, his red scales darkening with tension. Lower your weapon, Director Kroll ordered quietly. We don't want to appear hostile. Reed hesitated, then slowly lowered his pulse rifle. I don't trust this situation, Director. Tom scratched his head and smiled. No need for weapons. We've been working on this old girl for nearly 3 years now. She's a beauty, isn't she? Dr. Lem stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. 3 years? But our scans showed this ship has been drifting for thousands of years. Oh, it has, Tom agreed. We found it about 3 years ago. Been fixing her up bit by bit ever since. He looked at their bulky environmental suits and chuckled. You folks must be cooking in those things. The air's fine in this section. Engineer Tal checked her instruments again. The atmosphere is toxic to all known coalition species. How are you breathing it? Tom shrugged. It's a bit stale, but it's mostly oxygen and nitrogen. Pretty close to Earth standard, actually. He tapped his simple suit. I'm just wearing this for the cold spots and radiation pockets. Some areas are still pretty hot. Navigator Pax's bird-like features twisted in confusion. Hot? You mean radioactive? And you're walking around in that? Tom nodded. Humans can handle a fair bit of radiation. Not ideal, but we manage. He gestured down the corridor. Why don't you come meet the captain? She'll explain things better than I can. The team exchanged uncertain glances. We should proceed, Kroll decided. This is exactly the kind of first contact scenario the Coalition prepares for. They followed. Tom through the winding corridors of the massive ship. As they walked, they noticed more signs of human presence, tools scattered about, makeshift lighting systems attached to the walls, and strange markings written in what must be a human language. How many of you are there? Reed asked, still keeping his hand near his weapon. Just 12 of us on the expedition team, Tom replied. Small crew for a ship this size, but we make do. And your vessel? Kroll inquired. Where is it docked? Tom pointed vaguely upward. The Pioneer is docked in the upper bay. Nothing fancy, just our transport and living quarters when we're not working here. They entered a large chamber that appeared to be an engine room. Massive machinery lined the walls, with cables and pipes running in all directions. In the center stood a group of humans around a table covered with papers and devices. One of the humans, a female with short gray hair, looked up as they entered. She wore a similar patchwork suit to Tom's, though hers had additional pockets and tools attached. "Our guests have arrived," she said, straightening up. "Welcome aboard the Ancestor. That's what we've named her since we don't know her original designation. I'm Captain Wells." Kroll stepped forward. "I am Director Kroll of the Galactic Coalition, Science Vessel Seeker. This is my team: Captain Reed, Dr. Lem, Engineer Tal, and Navigator Pax." Captain Wells nodded to each of them. "First contact with an advanced alien coalition. Exciting day for us." Dr. Lem couldn't contain herself any longer. "How are you surviving these conditions? This ship originated from a Class 111 death world. The environment should be lethal to most forms of life." Wells smiled. "That's because we're from a Class 111 death world too. Earth." The aliens froze in stunned silence. "Impossible," Engineer Tal whispered. "No intelligent species could evolve under such conditions." "And yet here we are," Wells replied. She gestured to a nearby human who was working on a large component. "Mike, show them what we found in Section 7. The human called Mike wiped his hands on his suit and brought over a small device. He placed it on the table and pressed a button. A holographic image appeared, showing a star map. "This is a navigation chart we restored," Wells explained. "It shows the ship's origin point and its planned route." She pointed to a star. "This is where the ship came from thousands of years ago." Kroll leaned closer, his four eyes widening. "That's an uncharted space. And this," Wells continued, pointing to another location, "is Earth, our home." Captain Reed studied the map with growing concern. "You're claiming this ship visited your world?" "Not just visited," Wells said. "We believe the beings who built this ship studied Earth extensively. They were researching death worlds and the life forms that evolved on them." Tom brought over steaming cups of a dark liquid and offered them to the aliens. "Coffee, anyone?" "Finally got the food synthesizer. Partially working." The aliens declined, still too shocked to consider consuming anything from the ship. "Show them the lab," Wells instructed. Tom led them through another door into what appeared to be a research facility. The walls were lined with chambers, many, broken or empty, but some still intact. Inside these containers were preserved specimens, plants and animals from various worlds. "We think they were collecting and studying life from extreme environments," Tom explained. "Earth included." Dr. Lem approached one of the chambers. Inside was a creature that looked similar to the humans, but with subtle differences. "Is this?" she began. "An early human ancestor, we think," Wells said, joining them. "From about 50,000 years ago. These shipbuilders were interested in our evolution." Captain Reed turned to Kroll. "Director, we should return to the Seeker and report this discovery. This goes beyond our mission parameters." Kroll ignored him, too fascinated by what he was seeing. "Captain Wells, your species evolved on a Class 111 world. How did you develop technology advanced enough for space travel?" Wells smiled. "We're stubborn and curious. Earth tried to kill us a million different ways, so we got really good at survival." "Show them what we did in the control room," suggested Mike from behind them. The group moved to another chamber filled with complex control panels. Many had been partially disassembled, with human tools and components attached. "We couldn't understand a lot of the original systems," Wells explained, "so we bypassed them and installed our own. Crude but effective." Engineer Tal ran her 6 fingers over one of the modified panels. "This is remarkable engineering. To interface with technology thousands of years more advanced than your own." "Necessity is the mother of invention," Tom said with a grin. "When something tries to kill you, you get creative real fast." Suddenly, the lights flickered. A low rumble passed through the ship. "That's the 3rd time today," Wells said with a frown. "Something's changing in the ship's core. It's like it's waking up." "Waking up?" Navigator Pax asked nervously. "You mean it's automated?" We think it has some kind of artificial intelligence, Wells explained. Dormant for centuries, but our repairs seem to be triggering reactivation sequences. As if responding to her words, the main screen on the wall lit up. Strange symbols flashed across it, too fast to read. It's scanning, Tom said, watching the display. It does this sometimes. The symbols stopped. A single image appeared on the screen. A DNA helix. It's doing it again, Wells said quietly. It keeps coming back to human DNA. What does it mean? Kroll asked. Wells looked at the alien team, her expression serious. We think this ship recognized us, not as invaders or explorers, but as something it was programmed to find. The ship rumbled again, stronger this time. More systems began to activate around them, lights turning on, displays flickering to life. Captain Reed stepped back. We should leave. Now. Too late for that, Tom said, pointing to another screen. They watched as an external camera showed the Seeker in the distance. Between the two vessels, a force field had appeared, shimmering in the vacuum of space. We're all locked in now, Wells said grimly. The ship has decided no one's leaving. The aliens stared at the humans, who seemed remarkably calm despite the situation. Don't worry, Wells assured them with a confident smile that somehow made the aliens even more nervous. This isn't the first time we've been trapped in a deadly situation. Dealing with impossible danger is what humans do best. The ship rumbled again, stronger this time. Lights flickered throughout the engine room as more systems activated. What's happening? Captain Reed demanded, his scales flaring in alarm. Captain Wells studied the nearest control panel, where symbols flashed rapidly. The ship is powering up its main systems. Our repairs must have triggered some kind of automatic restart sequence. Director Kroll moved closer to the human captain. Can you stop it? Not sure we should, Wells replied, calmly. This might be our chance to learn what this vessel was really designed for. Engineer Tal connected her translator device to one of the terminals. The language is unlike anything in our database, but I'm detecting patterns. Give me time, and I might be able to understand some of it. As Tal worked, Tom led the others through the ship. The corridors were now fully lit, revealing details they hadn't noticed before. The walls were covered with intricate carvings showing various worlds and species. We think this is a historical record, Tom explained, pointing to a section that depicted beings with 4 limbs working on different planets. The shipbuilders visited many worlds studying life forms. Dr. Lem examined the carvings with fascination. These appear to be evolutionary charts. They were tracking how species adapted to different environments. They entered a large chamber with a transparent ceiling. Above them, stars gleamed in the blackness of space. In the center of the room stood a circular platform surrounded by control panels. We call this the observatory, Tom said. It's where we found the first clues about the ship's purpose. As they approached the platform, it suddenly lit up. A holographic display appeared showing a spinning model of Earth. It's never done that before, Tom said, surprised. The model zoomed in, showing different regions of Earth. Images of humans appeared next to each region, along with data in the alien script. Navigator Pax watched with wide eyes. It looks like a research database. Not just research, Dr. Lem said quietly. Genetic cataloging. Another rumble shook the ship, stronger than before. The lights flickered again. That didn't feel good, Tom muttered. He touched the communicator on his wrist. Wells, we've got a situation in the observatory. The ship is displaying Earth data. Wells's voice crackled through the device. Get back to the engine room. Tal has translated some of the language. You all need to hear this. On their way back, they passed through a section where the floor was covered in a fine metallic dust. Captain Reed stopped, his military training alerting him to potential danger. What is this? He asked, kneeling to examine the substance. Tom shrugged. Some kind of repair material. The ship seems to be healing itself. We've seen it happening in several sections. Healing itself? Reed repeated. The ship is alive? Not exactly, Tom replied. More like self-repairing nanotechnology. Pretty advanced stuff. When they reached the engine room, they found Wells and Tal working together at the main control panel. The other humans were busy at different stations, monitoring the ship's awakening systems. "Show them what you found," Wells said to Tal. The engineer nodded and displayed a translation on her device. "I've only decoded fragments, but the basic meaning is clear. This ship is called the Preserver. It was built by a species that referred to themselves as the Guardians." "The Guardians?" Kroll asked. "I've never heard of such a species in Coalition records." "They lived over 10,000 years ago," Tal continued. "According to this, they feared a great catastrophe was coming, some kind of galactic extinction event. They built this ship as an ark to preserve genetic material from thousands of worlds." Dr. Lem's antenna twitched with excitement. "A genetic ark, that explains the specimen chambers we saw earlier. But why the special interest in humans?" Navigator Pax asked. Wells pointed to another part of the translation. "This section mentions threshold species, life forms that evolved in extreme environments and developed intelligence despite the odds. The Guardians believed these species had the best chance of surviving the catastrophe. And Earth is one such world," Kroll said, understanding dawning on his 4 eyes. "A Class 111 death world that somehow produced intelligent life." "Exactly," Wells nodded. "The ship recognizes us as one of the species it was programmed to find and protect." The ship shuddered again. This time, the deck plates beneath them began to vibrate steadily. "What's happening now?" Reed demanded. One of the humans, a tall man with dark skin, called from a nearby console. "Captain, the engine core is fully activating, power levels rising rapidly." "Is it dangerous?" Kroll asked, his voice tight with concern. Tom laughed. "Everything on this ship is dangerous, Director." Wells shot him a look, then turned to Kroll. "We're not in immediate danger, but the ship is preparing to do something, possibly to move." As if confirming her words, a deep hum began to build throughout the vessel. The deck vibration increased. "Captain!" another human called out. "Radiation levels are spiking in sections 3 and 5. Wells frowned. "Seal those sections. Everyone else, radiation protocols." The humans quickly pulled up their suit hoods and activated their minimal shielding devices. For them, it seemed routine, a minor inconvenience. Dr. Lem checked her own suit readings and gasped. "The radiation levels are already at lethal levels for most Coalition species. How are you surviving this?" "Earth has areas with high natural radiation," Wells explained. "Humans can withstand more than most species, not indefinitely, but enough to function." The alien team watched in amazement as the humans moved efficiently around the engine room, making adjustments to systems and calmly reporting changing conditions. "The gravity is increasing too," Navigator Pax noted, struggling to move. "It's approaching 1.5 times Coalition standard." "Earth gravity is slightly higher than your standard," Tom said, moving easily despite the increasing force. Another Death World trait. Suddenly, all the screens in the engine room changed to show the same symbol, a double helix surrounded by stars. "The ship has completed its scan of our genetic material," Wells announced. "It's confirmed that humans are one of the species it was programmed to protect." A new rumble shook the ship, but this one felt different. Purposeful, controlled. The engine hum grew louder. "It's preparing for a jump," one of the humans called out. "A jump?" Reed's scales paled. "You mean faster than light travel? This ancient vessel has FTL capability." "Looks that way," Wells replied. "And it's taking us somewhere." "We need to get back to the Seeker," Kroll said urgently. Wells shook her head. "The force field is still in place. No one's leaving this ship now." The engine room began to glow with an eerie blue light. The air itself seemed to shimmer. "FTL protocols," Wells ordered. Her crew immediately secured loose equipment and moved to designated positions. The alien team stood frozen, unsure what to do. To their surprise, the humans quickly guided them to secure positions, showing a concern for their safety that seemed at odds with their casual attitude toward danger. "Hold on to something," Tom advised, gripping a nearby railing. First jumps are always rough. The ship's vibration reached its peak. Through the observation window, they could see space beginning to distort around them. "Where is it taking us?" Kroll asked, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. Wells looked at him, her eyes bright with the same excitement and curiosity that had driven humans to explore their deadly homeworld and beyond. "Unknown territory," she replied with a smile. "Our specialty." The stars outside stretched into lines of light. The ship lurched and reality seemed to bend around them. The preserver and everyone aboard vanished from normal space, jumping toward a destination only the ancient vessel knew. As the aliens held on for dear life, they noticed something remarkable. The humans weren't afraid. They were exhilarated, facing the unknown with the unique confidence of beings who had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. In that moment, the coalition team began to understand the true meaning of a death world advantage. The jump through faster-than-light travel lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours to the alien visitors. When reality settled around them again, the preserver emerged into an unfamiliar star system. Director Kroll picked himself up from the floor. His environmental suit had automatically stiffened during the jump, protecting him from the worst of the gravitational forces. Even so, he felt bruised all over. "Status report," he called weakly to his team. Captain Reed was already on, his feet checking his weapon systems. "Operational, Director, but that was unpleasant." Dr. Lem and Navigator Pax confirmed they were also unharmed, though shaken by the experience. Engineer Tal was at a console, working with the humans to understand what had happened. In contrast, to the aliens, the humans seemed barely affected by the jump. Captain Wells was already checking the ship's systems, moving with energy and focus. "All sections reporting in," she announced. "Minor damage in the lower decks, but nothing critical." Tom helped Kroll steady himself. "First jumps are always rough. You did well. Some species pass out completely." Kroll's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he tried to process the human's casual attitude. "Where are we?" he asked. Wells pointed to the main screen, where a star map had appeared. "According to the ship's navigation, we're about 500 light-years from our previous position. In uncharted space, at least uncharted by your coalition or our Earth charts." The screen showed a yellow star with 7 planets orbiting it. The 3rd planet was highlighted. "The ship has selected that world as our destination," Wells explained. "We're on a direct course." Navigator Pax studied the display with professional interest. "Interesting. That planet appears to be in the habitable zone of its star." One of the human crew called out from another station. "Captain, we've got unusual readings from the ship's core. The energy signature has changed." Wells and Tom exchanged concerned looks. "What's happening?" Kroll asked. "We're not sure," Wells admitted, "but the ship is doing something new. Its systems are activating in sequence like it's running through a programmed routine." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the vessel. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "Environmental breach in Section 8, a human technician shouted. "Atmosphere, venting into space." Wells immediately took charge. "Seal off that section. Mike, take a repair team and assess the damage." 3 humans quickly gathered equipment and headed toward the damaged area. "Should we help?" Reed asked, his training making him restless during a crisis. "Thank you, but no," Wells replied. "Your suits aren't designed for emergency repairs. We've handled worse." As the humans rushed to deal with the breach, Dr. Lem noticed something on her scanner. "Director, the ship's biological systems are activating. The specimen chambers we saw earlier, they're powering up." Kroll turned to Wells. "Captain, we need to understand what this vessel is doing. If it's awakening fully, we should know its intentions." Wells nodded. "Agreed. Tal has made progress with the translations. She might be able to access more of the ship's database now." They moved to where Engineer Tal was working at the main console. Her 6-fingered hands moved rapidly over the controls as she attempted to communicate with the ship's systems. "I've managed to access some of the command protocols," she reported. "The ship is following its primary directive: preservation and restoration." Restoration, Kroll repeated. Of what? Life, Tal said simply. According to these records, the Guardians built this vessel to save species from extinction and eventually restore them to suitable worlds. Wells leaned closer to the screen. It's chosen that planet as a restoration site. It's going to seed the world with some of the genetic material it's preserved. A loud crash echoed through the ship, followed by the sound of tearing metal. The deck plates vibrated beneath their feet. What now? Reed demanded, raising his weapon instinctively. Tom's voice came through the communication system. Captain, we've got a problem in Section 5. The ship is changing. Changing how? Wells asked. The walls are moving, reconfiguring themselves. It's like the whole ship is reshaping itself. Another alarm sounded, this one with a different pitch. The main screen changed to show internal schematics of the vessel. Large sections were highlighted in red. The ship is sealing off most of the chambers, Tal translated. It's creating secure zones for something. A human technician called from across the room. Captain, life support is failing in multiple sections. Temperature dropping rapidly in the east wing and radiation levels spiking in the west. Wells made a quick decision. Everyone to the observatory. It's the most stable section right now. As they moved through the corridors, they saw the changes Tom had described. The metal walls seemed to flow like liquid in some places, hardening into new configurations. Doors appeared where none had been before, while others vanished entirely. The ship is rearranging itself, Dr. Lem observed with scientific detachment that barely masked her fear. Fascinating but terrifying. When they reached the observatory, they found other humans already there, along with equipment they had managed to salvage. Report, Wells ordered. Half the ship is now inaccessible, Mike replied. The preserver is reconfiguring for its restoration mission. It doesn't seem to care that we're aboard. Captain Reed paced the room, his scales darkening with stress. We need to regain control of this vessel or find a way to return to our ship. The Seeker is 500 light-years away, Navigator Pax reminded him. And we don't know how to operate the jump drive. Wells turned to Tal. Can you communicate with the ship's AI? Make it understand we're not part of its programming? Before Tal could answer, the lights in the observatory dimmed. The transparent ceiling above them cleared, showing the approaching planet. It was blue and green, similar to Earth, but with different continent shapes. We're entering orbit, Pax noted. The ship shuddered as it decelerated. On the displays around them, new information appeared. Atmospheric composition, surface temperature, gravitational measurements. It's definitely a habitable world, Dr. Lem said, reading the data. Similar to Coalition standard conditions. Not for us, Tom said grimly. Look at the radiation readings. The aliens checked the numbers and froze in shock. Those levels are lethal, Reed said. No Coalition species could survive on that surface without full protection, Wells nodded. But humans could, at least for a while. The radiation is high, but within our tolerance range. Kroll looked at the humans with new understanding. This is why the ship recognized you. It was programmed to find worlds that match the conditions of the species it preserved. This planet is perfect for humanity, a Class 111 environment. A mechanical voice suddenly spoke throughout the observatory, using a language none of them recognized. The words repeated several times. It's counting down, Tal translated. The ship is preparing to launch preservation pods to the surface. The deck beneath them vibrated as machinery activated in distant parts of the ship. That's not all, Mike called from a sensor station. The ship is venting atmosphere in all habitable sections except this one. It's trying to clear the vessel of life forms. Captain Reed's scales flared in alarm. It's trying to kill us. Not kill, Dr. Lem corrected, studying the sensor readings. Evacuate. Look, it's preparing shuttlecraft in the launch bay. Wells quickly checked the readings and nodded. The ship wants us off before it proceeds with its mission. It's giving us a way out. To a radiation-soaked planet, Reed objected, which humans can survive on, Kroll noted. He turned to Wells. The ship isn't trying to rescue us. It's trying to rescue you. Wells looked troubled. I won't leave your team to die. There must be another way, The countdown continued as the ship entered stable orbit. The preservation pods were loading, preparing to seed the planet below with life from thousands of years ago and galaxies away. Tom suddenly stood straighter, his eyes lighting up with an idea. The environmental controls in the specimen chambers. If we can access them, we might be able to create a safe zone for the coalition team. And if we can communicate with the ship's AI, Wells continued, catching on, we might convince it that the coalition species are also worth preserving. The mechanical voice reached the final numbers in its countdown. Time was running out. It's worth trying, Kroll agreed. What do you need from us? Wells looked at the alien team with determination. First, we need to get to the control core, and that means passing through sections with radiation levels that would kill you in minutes. But not you, Reed said, finally understanding the advantage humans had. Wells nodded, her expression grim but resolute. Death World survivors, at your service. As the countdown reached its final numbers, the humans prepared to venture into the deadly environment of the awakened ship, their unique biology the only hope for the coalition team's survival. The countdown reached 0. Throughout the massive ship, hatches opened to release preservation pods toward the planet below. Each pod contained genetic material from long-extinct species, ready to begin a new evolutionary cycle on the radiation-soaked world. In the observatory, Captain Wells handed out the last of the human emergency gear to her crew. The plan is simple, she explained to both humans and aliens. Tom, Mike, and I will go to the control core. The radiation levels there are lethal to coalition species but manageable for humans with our shielding. The rest of you stay here where it's safe. Director Kroll stepped forward. We cannot ask you to risk your lives for us. Wells smiled. You didn't ask. We offered. Captain Reed, who had been skeptical of the humans from the beginning, looked confused. Why would you help us? We're strangers, different species entirely. That's what humans do, Tom said with a shrug. We look out for each other. And right now, each other includes you. Dr. Lem's antenna twitched with emotion. The radiation levels in the core will harm even you. Your Death World advantages have limits. We can handle about 30 minutes of exposure, Mike replied, checking his radiation badge. Should be enough time. Wells turned to Engineer Tal. You've made the most progress with the ship's language. I need everything you've learned loaded into this. She held up a small device. Tal connected her translator to Wells' device. This contains all my translation work, but I don't know if it will be enough to communicate with the ship's AI. It's our best shot, Wells said. As the humans prepared to leave, Kroll approached Wells. Captain, I believe I understand now. Your species survived on a death world not just because of physical adaptations, but because you developed something else. Cooperation, self-sacrifice for the group. Wells nodded. Humans are fragile individually. We survived because we worked together. With final preparations complete, the 3 humans sealed their makeshift radiation suits and headed for the door. The rest of both crews watched them go, the aliens still amazed by the humans' willingness to enter deadly environments. The journey to the control core was grueling. As Wells, Tom, and Mike moved deeper into the ship, the radiation levels rose steadily. Their badges changed color from green to yellow, then to orange, warning of increasing exposure. The ship itself continued to transform around them. Walls shifted position, corridors rearranged themselves, and strange mechanical arms emerged to modify systems. It's like the ship is building something, Mike observed, ducking under a moving panel. Or preparing something, Wells replied. When they finally reached the control core, they found a circular chamber filled with glowing equipment. In the center stood a pillar of light that pulsed with energy. That must be the AI core, Wells said, approaching cautiously. Tom checked his radiation badge, now glowing red. We've got maybe 15 minutes before we need to leave. Wells connected Tal's translation device to what appeared to be a data port. The screens around them flickered as the device attempted to communicate with the ship's systems. Come on, she muttered, watching the symbols flash across the displays. Suddenly, the light pillar pulsed brighter. A voice spoke, still in the unknown, language but slower than before. Wells looked at the translation device. Words appeared. Unrecognized life forms, state purpose. "We need to communicate," Wells said clearly. "The beings in our care are in danger. They cannot survive the conditions you have created." The translation worked both ways, converting her words into the ship's language. The AI was silent for a moment, then responded. "Non-threshold species are not priority. Preservation protocol active." Wells glanced at her companions. "It's focused on its original mission. We need to change its parameters." Tom stepped forward. "Tell it we're from Earth. Remind it that we're one of the species it was programmed to protect." Wells nodded. "We are humans from Earth, a threshold species you recognized. The other beings with us are our allies. They have helped us survive and evolve. They are important to our continued existence." The AI processed this information. The pillar of light changed color, shifting from blue to green. Threshold species. Survival is primary directive. Explain relationship with non-threshold beings. Mike wiped sweat from his forehead, feeling the effects of radiation exposure. "Tell it the truth. We're stronger together than alone." Wells took a deep breath. "These beings represent a coalition of species that have advanced through cooperation. They have technologies and knowledge we lack. We have strengths they lack. Together, we both survive better than apart. This is evolution through cooperation, not just competition." The ship was silent for a long moment. The humans waited, aware that their time in the high radiation zone was running short. Tom's hands were shaking slightly, and Mike leaned against a console for support. Finally, the AI responded. "Cooperation is evolutionary strategy, reassessing parameters." The screens around them flickered rapidly as the ship processed this new information. The light pillar pulsed faster. Parameter update accepted, modifying preservation protocols. Throughout the ship, they felt a change. The constant reconfiguration of walls and systems slowed, then stopped. Displays showed radiation levels beginning to drop in several sections. "It's adjusting the environment," Wells said with relief. "It's making the ship habitable for everyone." "We should get back," Tom urged, his voice strained. "Our radiation doses are getting too high." As they turned to leave, the AI spoke again. "Query, Earth status?" Wells paused. "Earth survives, humans survive. We have begun exploring space, meeting other species. New parameter. Alliance with non-threshold species improves survival probability. Updating mission." The humans made their way back through the ship, noticing that the corridors were now stable, no longer shifting and changing. By the time they reached the observatory, they were exhausted and showing signs of radiation sickness. Dr. Lem immediately came forward with medical equipment. "Your radiation levels are dangerously high." "But we made it," Wells said weakly, allowing herself to be helped to a seat. Director Kroll approached. "The ship's systems are stabilizing. Radiation levels are dropping throughout the vessel. What did you do?" Tom managed a smile despite his pale face. "We taught it something about evolution it didn't know. Sometimes cooperation beats competition." "We told it that our species survive better together than apart," Mike added. The main screen in the observatory activated, showing the planet below. The preservation pods had landed and begun their work, but now new information appeared. The ship was terraforming the world, reducing radiation levels in certain regions. "It's creating areas where both humans and coalition species can survive," Engineer Tal translated. "It's applying the cooperation principle to its restoration mission." Navigator Pax studied the ship's navigation display. "It's also calculating a return jump to our original position. It's going to take us back." Captain Reed looked at the humans with newfound respect. "You risked your lives for us." "That's the real Death World advantage," Wells replied. "On Earth, the most dangerous place in the galaxy, we learned that sometimes you have to risk everything to help others survive. It's how we made it this far." The ship's AI spoke again. this time in a simplified version of the Coalition standard language. New mission parameter accepted. Preserve cooperation. Threshold species insights valuable. Director Kroll turned to Wells. It seems your humanity has impressed even an ancient AI. Perhaps there is much our Coalition can learn from Earth despite, or because of, its status as a death world. As the Preserver prepared for its return journey, humans and aliens worked together to understand its systems. The ship that had once been a mystery was now becoming a bridge between species. In the observatory, Wells watched the planet below grow smaller as they left orbit. The preservation pods would transform that world, creating new life based on ancient patterns. But now, that life would evolve in zones designed for cooperation between different types of species. You know, she said to Kroll, I think the Guardians would approve of this update to their mission. Kroll's 4 eyes blinked in agreement. Indeed, they sought to preserve life. You've shown a way to help it thrive. As the ship engaged its jump drive, preparing to return them to Coalition space, Wells smiled at her human crew, who had recovered enough to return to their duties. They had done what humans always did when faced with impossible odds on their death world: adapted, cooperated, and found a way to survive, not just for themselves, but for everyone. That, she reflected, was humanity's greatest strength. And now, the rest of the galaxy would learn about it too.